Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Village Vanguard. Before we begin our set tonight, if you could please take a moment and silence your cell phones. If you could turn the volume down or shut them up completely for the remainder of the set, we'd appreciate it. I'd also like to mention that once the lights go up on stage and the music begins, we do ask that you refrain from taking photographs with or without flash or any kind of audio or video recording. And then finally, and most importantly, as a courtesy to these great musicians and your neighbors in the audience, if you could please keep the conversation down to a minimum during the music, we'd appreciate that as well. There are CDs available at the bar in the back of the club if you'd like to take some of this great music home with you. Thanks again, and we'll begin in a moment.
So great to be here and to play for you. Thank you for coming. And I want to introduce these amazing musicians that I have the joy to share the bandstand with. This is Jason Lindner. On bass, Tim LaFave. On drums, Mark Juliana. That was a song of mine called Shake Loose, and we're going to continue with another original of mine. This is called Beyond Now.
First of all, welcome to the second installment of Any Day of the Week. If this is the first time seeing this, definitely go down to the link below, jazzbecausblog.com, and check out the first episode. It features a great saxophonist, Andrew Gould. If this is the second time you're seeing this, then good on you for being so pragmatic about it. This week I visited the Village Vanguard on 7th Ave here in New York City. If you're not familiar with this area, it's riddled with jazz history. In just the Lower West Side, which is like Greenwich Village area, you have clubs like the Blue Note, Smalls, 55 Bar, Cornelia Street Cafe, Fat Cat, and the Vanguard, as well as some newer places that popped up like Mesro. If you're looking for jazz, definitely come here first. The Vanguard's been around for quite some time. It's been a place for writers, poets, musicians, and general life livers since Max Gordon opened it in 1935. Nowadays, the Vanguard is known mainly as a jazz venue, but originally it was just folk music and sort of beat poets, and a lot of people that were just trying to blow off some steam and get the latest happenings of the day. It wasn't really until like the mid-40s that the jazz really took hold in that club. Max Gordon opened it for like late night jam sessions and things like that, and he was actually the first venue to really book or bill a jazz act as like a main drawer of a crowd. From then on, the Vanguard has hosted sort of a ton of historic jazz musicians. If you name any jazz musician you can think of, I can pretty much guarantee they've played there. And musicians like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and Charles Mingus, just to name a few, have recorded a ton of live albums there to great acclaim, obviously. What's really beautiful about this place is that the owner, Max Gordon, and his wife have spent the entire sort of history of the venue sort of discovering unknown talent, and they continue to do that today. Comedians, poets, and musicians have been getting their start at the Vanguard since day one, but one start really stands out to me as something that has helped progress not only jazz but music as a whole. In the late 1950s, the Vanguard gave a stage to an unknown and generally underappreciated pianist by the name of Thelonious Monk. The relentless pushing of his music and talent by Max and his wife helped Monk get his genius to the people, even if many of them weren't really ready for it. Like its interior and exterior, the Vanguard, their mission statement hasn't really changed much since its inception. They continue to host not only world-class musicians, but the endless unknown talent that this city is so well known for. It's cool to think sometimes that maybe the next jazz legend of our generation will get his or her start, most likely here in New York City, probably somewhere in Greenwich Village, and as history sort of tells us, probably in the basement club called the Village Vanguard. As for this performance, the musicians are not really unknown talent any longer. They've definitely propelled themselves well into the category of world-class musician. McCaslin could easily boast an impressive resume on his site, but instead he talks of the group as a whole, which I find rather fitting because his music is shaped in the same way. If you visit his website and go to the About page, it's filled with praise of his fellow musicians and people that have inspired him over the years. It's also filled with his undying gratitude to David Bowie, especially as of late. McCaslin's group that I saw on Tuesday night was considered obviously David Bowie's last band, and they were the collaborators in his final album, Black Star. Despite McCaslin's humility, I think it's still important to mention his history as an innovator of this music. With 3 Grammy nominations and 12 albums to his name, and a bunch of side projects that he's been on, he's got a pretty profound body of work to check out. He was born in Santa Clara, California, to a musical family. His dad was a vibraphonist. McCaslin was a part of that group since he was 12 years old. There's a great story that I don't really have a source for, but it was told to me years ago by one of my teachers. Saxophonists are pretty infamous for changing gear, like changing horns and mouthpieces and reeds and experimenting with different stuff to try to get the sound that they're most comfortable with. But this story in particular tells that McCaslin is still playing on the same horn that he picked up when he was 12, and the same mouthpiece that he picked up when he was 12. My teacher attributed that to that's the reason why his sound is the way it is and why he's so comfortable playing, and he spent X amount of years on that same setup. Again, I don't know if that's 100% true. It could just be that my teacher wanted me to stop making excuses for any shortcomings I may have had in that time. He moved to New York in 1991, and he was Michael Brecker's replacement in Steps Ahead for a few years. And then from around 1994 to 98, he played with a bunch of different people. David Binney, he was part of his group. Dave Douglas, Antonio Sanchez, Maria Schneider Orchestra. And then he started making his own albums. From 1998 on, he sort of worked under his own name, obviously still doing the other side work, but he was the main bill, if you will. His work with David Bowie really began in 2014 when he was a soloist on one of David's singles, Sue. It was that in combination with sort of the suggesting by Maria Schneider for David Bowie to go check out Donny's group. So one night Bowie showed up at 55 Bar in New York and checked out this group. Apparently that was exactly the sound that Bowie was looking for, which would be featured ultimately on his final album. This week's episode features that band, minus Nate Wood on guitar, in a collection of David Bowie covers and David Bowie inspired originals by Donny himself. The band is made up of Jason Lindner on synthesizer and keyboard, Tim LaFave from the Tedeschi Trucks Band and Saturday Night Live, and Mark Giuliana, widely considered one of the best drummers in the world. Of course, leading his own groups and collaborating with guys like John Schofield and Brad Mehldau. As I said, it's fitting that Donny's site doesn't really boast much about him and more about the group as a whole, because that's the kind of music he writes, and that's what I heard on Tuesday. There was no point of virtuosic extension, there was no look at me, look what I can do on my instrument. Pretty much everything that was played was for the betterment of the music as a whole. It seemed like they were purely interested in making sounds that were intriguing and sort of beautiful for the audience to listen to. Obviously that's the goal of a lot of musicians, but many of them simply don't achieve that, and this group certainly did. There was a point in the performance that I unfortunately didn't capture, but Donny McCaslin stepped off to the left of the stage and featured Jason Lindner on a 5-minute synthesizer solo. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Just a series of sounds and rhythms and interesting combinations of the two that kept not only the audience captivated, but the band as well. Something about the way they all play together really keeps everything fresh, and there's a lot of mutual respect and love in that group, from what I can tell. I'm going to cut the talking a little short and let the music sort of speak for itself, but there's a disclaimer first. As you heard in the beginning of this episode, in the opening, the Vanguard suggests that you don't record performances. I took that more as like it's frowned upon rather than it's illegal. But if I upset anyone, the Vanguard or any of the musicians, I just want to say I hope you know that this video is constructed with the utmost respect for the establishment and for the band and the musicians themselves. Please don't sue me. Shoot me an email and I'll be happy to change whatever it is you think should be changed. Enjoy.
Let's start Juliana on the drums. Start Juliana. Thank you. Thank you.